Hello, everyone, and welcome to this panel where we're going to discuss some of these exciting new technologies for decarbonization. My name is Alf Martinez Felipe, and I'm actually honored to be chairing this session today, where we're going to have five excellent speakers. I'm co-champion of the hydrogen theme in the Center of Energy Transition. This is what we are actually celebrating today, the official launch of the center. Although the center has been running for over a year now, and we are getting excellent success engaging with people, with communities, and with academics, 150 colleagues through different teams. This morning we just had, as I said before, the formal launch with our principal, Professor Boyle, our center of the director, David Potts, and representatives from the government, Total, Siemens, and Aberdeen Climate Change. So as I mentioned before, the Center for Energy Transition is a multidisciplinary center that covers 8 different themes. We call renewable generation, carbon capture, we call hydrogen economies, oil and gas in transition. We also have circular economies, system integration and digitalization, demand and markets, and energy system governance and just transition. So apart from the obvious need for decarbonization to reach the net zero targets that the whole world has through 2050 and obviously the environmental issues, there is here a great economic and development opportunity and obviously a great impact when we're talking about the societies that are involved. And this is some of these opportunities we know pretty well in Aberdeen and in the region, in the north of Scotland, because we have a quite long track tradition as well and expertise in, for example, oil and gas technologies, and how we can somehow capitalize all this know-how and all this infrastructure to lead the green transition and the just transition as well. Some of you may be aware of the ambitions of the government, both the UK and the Scottish government, with a 10-point plan that was launched earlier last year, and also the plans of the Scottish government to push for hydrogen technologies and green technologies, decarbonization, etc. And so in Aberdeen, as I said before, we are trying hard to get this into our reality with investment, talking with our colleagues, our neighbors, and also our academics, trying to push into research and technology solutions. And today we have here with us, as I said before, 5 excellent speakers who are going to provide with their own views to get into that net zero scenario in the shortest time possible, with focus on the northeast, with focus on the Aberdeen region. So we got with us Dr. Nigel Holmes, who is the CEO of the Scottish Hydrogen and Fuels Association, Dr. Caitlin Cottrell, who is Senior Lecturer and Director of the Centre for Transport Research in the University of Aberdeen. We also have Martin McCormack from Opportunity Northeast here in Scotland, and also Dr. Claudia Fernandez Martin, lecturer in chemical engineering in the University of Aberdeen, and Binay Mulgunmath, who is the chief technologist of the Technology Driven Transition in the Oil and Gas Transition Center. I'm going to let them the floor in just 1 minute, just to remind you that if you have any question, you can use the Q&A section that you have in your Zoom framework, and by the end of the talks, then we will try to collect them and go through as many of them as possible. If you like a question, I think you can like the question also in the Q&A section, and then I think it goes to the top of them. So we'll probably prioritize those with more likes. But if you have any other questions which are not solved during the session, because obviously we're just short in time, we'll try to make sure that our speakers can provide you with a response later on. I think that's all I had to do as housekeeping. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to let the floor to our speakers. They're gonna present their ideas in 5-6 minutes talk. And then, as I said before, after that, we'll just get this Q&A section. And I will start by introducing our first speaker, who is Dr. Nigel Holmes from the Scottish Hydrogen and Fuel Cells Association. Nigel is the chief executive of the association, and he's been a member of the association since 2005, becoming chief executive officer in 2015. So over the past 10 years, he has grown the membership of the association almost fourfold, and has established the association as one of the most proactive industry associations in Europe, actually. The university is a member of the association. We are proud to be. Nigel has over 40 years of experience working in low carbon energy generation, supply and use, and his early industry experience was gained with the UK Central Electricity Generating Board and BP Chemicals with technical development and change management. And he has been actively involved in business and market developments since 2005. So Nigel studied chemistry at Oxford University, followed by a doctorate working in CETP, and completed his MBA with University of Edinburgh in 2004. He has been actively involved in public-private initiatives, including Scotland's 2020 Climate Group, the Scottish Transport Emissions Partnership, and with policy development, including the recently updated National Transport Strategy for Scotland and the BE's Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Sector Development Working Group. So Nigel, obviously an impressive CV, and always a pleasure to get you on board. I'll just let you the floor. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you very much for a comprehensive introduction. I'd now like to take this opportunity just to take you through some of the exciting developments that are happening in Scotland. So the first thing to do, if I can, is to share my screen. Hopefully you can now see the screen. So over the next 5 minutes, I'm going to take you through some of the activities that are happening across Scotland and how they fit into the wider picture. We will be talking about projects happening in Aberdeen with the bus and vehicle fleet, the Acorn project, how that will start to build up early hydrogen supply, but then some of the evidence around heat and the opportunities with local systems and other areas in Scotland that are indeed starting to increase their scale of activity and deployment. And the important takeaway is how that scaling up can actually link into wider activities. This isn't just about Scotland, this is a wider picture as well. But the starting point is the target for net zero by 2045. But the important stage point is the 2030 target. So for Scotland, a 75% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, which is really just building on some of the progress that's been made already and the fantastic achievement with the decarbonisation of electricity in Scotland. Now pretty much 100% of Scotland's annual demand of electricity is met from renewables, a large amount of that from wind. But going forward, it's not just about the production of electricity for local markets, it's about overproduction of electricity, and using that to produce green hydrogen is one of the biggest opportunities that's been identified by the Scottish Government in their recent hydrogen policy statement. And that's about 5 gigawatts of low carbon hydrogen by 2030. So it's an ambitious target, but a deliverable target. Deliverable because the opportunity links very closely into the deployment of offshore wind, and offshore wind linked to electrolyzers for hydrogen production is seen as being one of the best low cost, high volume opportunities for hydrogen production going forward. But it's not new. Hydrogen has been produced from renewable electricity for many years. Norway back since the 1930s has been producing hydrogen at multi-megawatt scale, hundreds of megawatts by the 2050s, and we're just building on some of this heritage and starting to redeploy this with different forms of renewables. So going on a quick canter around Scotland, we're going to start in Fife in Methil, move up to Aberdeen, and then up to Orkney, and then back down to Cromarty before we take the bigger picture. So the Hydrogen Office in Methil, 2011, was founded, opened, and since then it's actually done a fantastic amount of outreach. Probably about 30,000 pupils and students in the Fife area have been involved in workshops, events with the Hydrogen Office. critical because that sets the foundation for what's coming next. This is the H100 project, a key project to prove the safety and the reliability of using hydrogen for heat. Hydrogen, green hydrogen produced from renewables, in this case, offshore wind. And you can see in the picture on the left here, the actual offshore wind turbine, which will be feeding the power to the electrolyzer. That would be then going into storage to provide some buffer, and then being used in houses for heating and appliances. And this is a really good example of how hydrogen can be used to overcome one of the key challenges with mapping intermittent renewables onto variable demand, in particular heat, as you can see in this schematic here. So going forward, a couple of years' time, hopefully we'll be talking about the success of the H100 project, with the wind from this turbine being used to power the buildings, the households that you see on the hill in the picture. Moving up to Aberdeen, and I don't really think I need to expand too much on the success of the Aberdeen bus project, European funded project to bring in the fleet of 10 Van Hool buses, now expanding up to a bigger fleet, 25 double-deckers, Wright buses. But the key success here has been actually the achievement of the reliability of the refueler, the reliability of the buses, the number of passengers carried, the number of miles travelled, and all down to fundamentally the reliable production of hydrogen in Aberdeen at the Kitty Brewster facility. I believe this is actually the most intensely used hydrogen refueler in Europe, dispensing about 35 tonnes of hydrogen per year. A fantastic achievement. But let's not take away from some of the other achievements in Aberdeen. For example, the use of the Doosan fuel cells at P&J Live to provide clean heat and power for that facility. And going forward, the real opportunity is the location of Aberdeen, the convergence of pipelines coming in from offshore, the ability to sequester CO2 in offshore fields, puts Aberdeen potentially at the centre of a very interesting activity of scaling up hydrogen, green hydrogen and blue hydrogen, scaling that up to actually start to reduce the emissions overall, not just for industry, but also for heat, power and transport. But moving quickly up to Orkney, so fascinating contrast in terms of location and scale, but Orkney is ahead of the curve in terms of using renewable electricity. Projects such as Big Hit have been starting to show how that excessive renewable electricity can be captured and used in different applications, in particular locally in heat, power and transport. What you see here is the ferry which brought the hydrogen from Shappensea across to Kirkwall, and some of the equipment, so fuel cell for heat and power in Kirkwall Harbour, the vans which run on hydrogen fuel cells, is all part of the Big Hit project. But this project has actually set the foundations for a lot more besides, and not just in Orkney. So the sharing of experience, lessons learned, has actually helped projects in the Netherlands, such as Heaven, and in Spain, in Mallorca, with the Green Highland project. So with Heaven project, there's actually a massive challenge for Groningen to switch off its gas field to start to become a low carbon economy, but Heaven is starting to help with that. And in Mallorca, this is very much about starting to use the availability of solar to produce green hydrogen and piping that hydrogen to Palma, where it's going to be used for transport and heat. So growing the project portfolio in Orkney will actually continue. Marine, aviation, hard to treat transport areas, industry, including heat for distilling, is all part of the activities going forward. And some of the lessons learned are being shared through the Hydrogen Territories platform. And if you want to find any more information about that, follow the link, and our next event is on the 14th of June. But coming back down to the main area of Scotland, Cromarty, one of Scotland's largest natural harbours, they're actually now starting to look at the opportunity to bring in electricity from offshore wind, to convert that to hydrogen and start to use that for decarbonising industry locally, for example, distilleries. And recently they signed an MOU for the import and transshipment into Europe of green hydrogen. And that is really key, because what this signals is that Scotland is open for business, that Scotland can actually start to produce renewable electricity, use that for green hydrogen production, and then start to ship that into areas of Europe that need that access to low carbon and renewables. And this is about building a hydrogen economy, sharing experience and making things happen. So it's not a theoretical exercise. This is about making the progress that we need to make now if we're going to deliver 2030 targets and net zero. So hopefully that's given you a taste of what's going on in Scotland. We'll hear more from the other speakers. Just a quick word about the association. We're a growing association. We share a lot of information with members. If you want to find out more, please get in touch. My details are on the slide. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm now going to hand back to Alf. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Nigel. It's always so good to hear everything that is going on in Scotland. And I think you forgot to mention that if you have a driving license, you can actually drive the car filled with hydrogen fuel cells, right? So there's an opportunity there as well. Okay, so thanks, Nigel. Let's move on to the next speaker, who is my colleague, Dr. Caitlin Cottrell, who is director of at Aberdeen University Centre for Transport Research and serves as the Zero Emission Mobility Theme Champion for the Scottish Energy Technology Partnership in collaboration with Transport Scotland. Caitlin has been working in the transport sector for over 15 years with a focus of sustainable, inclusive, and intelligent mobility. And I guess that she's going to talk us about transport and opportunities as well. So it's over to you, Caitlin.
Thanks, Alf. Let me just get this to share. Okay. So yeah, I really did want to focus on opportunities and needs on the transport sector. So happily, Nigel gave a great introduction, so I won't be covering a lot of the well-trodden information, but it's always great to see what's going on in transport. I just wanted to start by giving a scale of the problem. I think we all know that the transport is a major contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, but globally, it's actually contributing 25% of global CO2 emissions. In Scotland, transport accounts for 37% of Scotland's GHG emissions. Of this, road transport makes up 69%. So, we're really seeing that there's a need to have whole-scale change in the transport sector and that it's becoming quite critical. But at the same time, transport is such a critical need of everyday activities, of everyday life. Access to opportunities, access to jobs, the economic balance of a region, of a city. It's really just a critical part of everything that we do, whether it's accessing people, accessing goods, accessing services. And with that, we have a really key challenge and a really challenging challenge ahead of us. And that's how can we address the environmental consequences of our current mobility practices while still facilitating this access to opportunities to goods and services? And how can we do that in an equitable manner? One thing that we've looked at and that we talk quite a bit about in the transport community is the idea of avoid, shift, improve. And what this suggests is that there's really no one right way to address the challenge. We can do things such as trying to put systems in place to help us avoid transport. We've seen quite a bit of that in the last year with working from home and with reductions. Hopefully it doesn't take a pandemic to get us to avoid some of our travel. Also shifting, so promoting and improving energy efficient and environmentally friendly transport modes, such as we've seen across Scotland and the UK, as well as far beyond our borders, with moving towards reallocation of road space for cycling and walking. But finally, also to improve the efficiency of the transport process. And that's really where energy transitions tend to focus, is on this idea of improving the transport that we are using. And we've certainly seen that increasing efforts are being made to move away from fossil-fueled internal combustion engines and towards more sustainable fuels. So I think, Nigel, I think we're using the same photo here, but of course there's the hydrogen project in Aberdeen. But it goes far beyond that. The Scottish Government has been supporting a lot of transition towards electric vehicles, whether that's in economic ways or in putting in the infrastructure. And there's an interesting project up in the Shetlands where they're trying to use tidal energy to fuel electric vehicles. There's also been quite a bit of focus on trying to reduce carbon and shift towards different modes of energy in the aircraft and airline industry, which would represent a pretty significant change. But the transition brings along with it a huge range of research needs. So simply because the technology is there doesn't mean that we're necessarily ready to adopt. And so we see a lot of opportunity in the transport sector for quite a lot of work to be done. So that includes, of course, sustainable energy production and transport, so getting it where it needs to be, developing the enabling infrastructure and skills needed to support and maintain alternatively fueled vehicles. So seeing maintenance and operations of hydrogen vehicles, electric vehicles, it's quite different from that of a traditional internal combustion engine and needs additional support. Certainly ensuring equity of access and availability and trying to encourage adoption. So of course, at the moment, electric vehicles are the big push, but there's quite an economic charge on that over a traditional vehicle, which can make it difficult, and it can certainly reduce the equity issues. Life cycle assessments of vehicle components, so looking at the cradle to grave development of vehicles, funding support for transitions and upskilling, and understanding different needs for different vehicle types. So something that might work very well for a small passenger vehicle might not be the best thing for a heavy goods vehicle. So this in turn requires an interdisciplinary, interconnected approach, such as that we've put together here at the Center for Energy Transitions. And transport is really a part of our daily lives, and it has an indelible impact on our access to all of these things that kind of make our lives worth living. So addressing and mitigating its damaging environmental impacts thus requires taking a very holistic view that considers both technological and societal implications, but also how those are bound up in policy and law. And ensuring that this takes place in a coordinated and comprehensive manner will require truly interdisciplinary research involving academics, but also government and industry, and considers something that considers not only the enabling technology, but also the market take-up and societal acceptance. So in short, there are a lot of opportunities ahead, and we're excited to be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Many thanks, Caitlin, for your excellent summary of the opportunities around the transport sector. And I just want to remind the audience that you can post your questions in the Q&A bit. So please feel free to do that. It's a great opportunity. We have 5 excellent speakers who will be absolutely delighted to answer your questions. We move on to the third speaker today, who is my colleague Martin McCormack, who is going to talk us about the Northeast Hydrogen Ambition and other projects in the region. Martin is the Energy Transition Program Director for Carbon Capture, Utilization and Storage and Hydrogen as Opportunity Northeast One, a private sector and not-for-profit business development organization driving transformational change in Northeast Scotland's economy and aiming to establish the region as an integrated low-carbon energy cluster, delivering a range of net zero projects and supporting a green recovery. Martin has 30 years experience in senior leadership and management roles with the energy sector. In his role as one, Martin is focused in developing and supporting delivery of key flagship energy transition projects that are underway within the region, as well as guiding the supply chain on how best to capitalize on the fast growing interest in the UK's net zero ambition, in particular in hydrogen, in carbon capture and storage. He's also leading a cross-industry group to design a green hydrogen test and demonstration facilities for the proposed energy transition zone project in Aberdeen. It's a major investment and a great opportunity across Aberdeen and the region, actually. And he's a member of the NECUS board and also sits on the base hydrogen sector development working group. So it's obviously we are delighted to get you here, Martin, and we are looking forward to hearing your views on these opportunities.
Yeah, thank you very much, Alfonso, and congratulations to the university for the launch of the Centre for Energy Transition, a great opportunity, very timely opportunity for the region. I was worried about getting through my slides in the short period available, but Nigel, my colleague Nigel Holmes, has gone through some of this material already, so I'll be able to whiz through so you don't hopefully get too bored with this. Nigel's already alluded to that hydrogen, and I will focus on hydrogen and touch upon the other energy transition opportunities. Hydrogen has been around for a long time, but it's an extremely nascent industry from a commercial perspective. However, its time seems to have arrived, and the Hydrogen Council, as for instance, talks about up to £300 billion of capital projects being invested in the 20s. And our own government, UK government, is talking about a 5 gigawatt target by 2030, as is the Scottish government, also a 5 gigawatt production target for hydrogen by 2030. So it's the time now, hopefully, for hydrogen to become a key player in the energy transition. So I've mentioned I will be focusing on hydrogen, but just to plug the region's capabilities in the whole energy transition space, and particularly around the just transition to a better future, a lower carbon future. Nigel's already mentioned the opportunity around ScotWind. If there's any questions on that, we can perhaps take them in the Q&A or follow up. The offshore opportunity around wind is going to be really important as well for the oil and gas, existing oil and gas sector, who also has a commitment to get to net zero by 2050. We'll touch upon the role of CCS. It's already been briefly mentioned by Nigel, but a bit of a plug here to the Scottish cluster. There is a BASE cluster sequencing competition ongoing. So all of us in Scotland, and particularly northeastern Scotland, are supporting the Back the Scottish cluster bid. So again, if there's any questions on that, we could maybe touch upon those at the end. If I can move the slides. So I'll whiz through this, and Nigel's already alluded to the significant experience that the city has in the hydrogen space on transport in particular. Around about 10 years of experience from the design through to the operation, and then the successful implementation around road transport in particular. And as Nigel has mentioned, we have 2 refueling stations and quite a significant diverse fleet of vehicles. And that fleet of vehicles is growing every day, so to speak. 15 double-decker buses are here with us, and 10 more to come, as Nigel's mentioned. And anyone on the number 19 route out to Cooter from the city centre will probably enjoy the experience of the journey on a very quiet and very efficient double-decker hydrogen vehicle. But the city isn't stopping there. And what we're trying to do is move from a place where hydrogen has really been in demonstration mode into the point where it can actually become a sustainable commercial business. And there's a project called the Aberdeen Hydrogen Hub, which is getting the attention and support of both Scottish Government and the private sector. And this is really to enable a hydrogen economy, a commercial hydrogen business to emerge in and around the city. And the key to that is aggregating demand. You need to have sufficient confidence in long-term hydrogen demand at the scale that someone will invest into on a commercial basis. So a lot of the work that Opportunity Northeast and the City Council and our other partner, Scottish Enterprise, has been doing is to see what is the status and how can we promote demand. This particular slide is talking about a specific study across the public sector fleet. Scottish Government has committed that all public sector entities will need to decarbonise or not be able to buy petrol or diesel vehicles on the lighter end of the range on 2025 and all vehicle types by 2030. So this particular study with 5 local authorities and 5 public sector entities and 2 private sector entities was carried out at the back end of 2020. Just under 4,000 vehicles were looked at. It was performed by an independent consultant called Cenex, who are technology agnostic, so they're experts in both battery, EVs, and hydrogen fuel cells. And the takeaway was just under a third of those vehicles would benefit from a range or a duty perspective from hydrogen. The strapline on top of that, though, is that many of the vehicles are not currently available in right-hand drive mode. So opportunity and for perhaps the Scottish and UK manufacturing business to come in and step into that space. This report is available. I'm happy to share this report if anyone wants to contact me after the webinar. Another example just about to kick off is to look at the role of hydrogen to decarbonize the city's district heat networks, or energy centers as they're known. The city has 5 existing sizable district heat networks, all natural gas fired at the moment, and a study is just about to be launched. The actual bidding process is just coming to a conclusion to look at whether hydrogen can play a significant role in that, as well as look at what alternative there is for hydrogen for these district heat networks. So an exciting, hopefully, opportunity to shine a light into what's the potential role for hydrogen on these big natural gas users in the city. Another interesting example of green hydrogen, as alluded to by Nigel, that we've got the ScotWind opportunity. Within one of our existing wind farms, Kincardine, 2 of the slots are going to be used for an exciting project called Dolphin. This is going to basically produce green hydrogen offshore and have a pipeline to shore. This is just to the south of the city, so it's just around off the coast of Stonehaven. And the pipeline is due to land just in the geography of the proposed energy transition zone to the south of the city. And one of the projects that we're looking to do to support the economy, to support the supply chain, to support the energy transition business opportunity is a proposed project called the Energy Transition Zone, which is land adjacent to the South Harbour. And in the case that this is publicly supported, it's going through the planning process. The part of that energy transition zone will be the creation of a hydrogen campus. And Alf and Nigel and other members of both industry and academia are working on scoping up a green hydrogen test and demonstration facilities that we would hope to site adjacent to the Dolphin project and also in this area of the energy transition zone. We'd also be looking to attract electrolyzer manufacturing opportunities, either new technologies from the UK or international players already in existence. And a lot of this will be around helping this nascent industry and helping the supply chain maximize the benefit of this new emerging opportunity in the business space. Nigel's already alluded to blue hydrogen. So the Acorn CCS project, which we hope to be one of the 2 projects to be picked by the UK government to go into track 1. This will enable blue hydrogen at quite significant scale, and that blue hydrogen can either be, blended into the existing gas grid, or in a more ambitious case, be used as a dedicated hydrogen pipeline to the city of Aberdeen, thus potentially allowing the city of Aberdeen to be heated and powered by hydrogen in the future. So in a not too distant future, there are many exciting flagship projects that we hope to be on the ground and up and running by 2025. And it doesn't stop there. The real potential for hydrogen is immense. Offshore green hydrogen production really does enable potential for green hydrogen export, a big push from the Scottish Government going forward, marine transport, rail transport, road transport, as well as decarbonising industry. A really fantastic opportunity for the region in and around the hydrogen space. The key thing we need to do is support these early demand projects to get up and running. Thanks very much.
Thanks indeed, Martin. It's great to have these conversations on these facilities, because I think it's a great opportunity for the region as well. We're going from the, let's say, national to the regional point, and now we're going to go a step further and talk about the technologies with a bit more of detail. And it's a pleasure to introduce yourself, my colleague and friend, Dr. Claudia Fernandez Martin, who's going to talk us about some of the recent work that we're doing at the School of Engineering at the University of Aberdeen. Dr. Fernandez Martin is indeed a lecturer in chemical engineering, deputy champion of in carbon capture, utilization and storage, and academic member of the UK Carbon Capture and Storage Research Centre. She's also champion of the circular economy theme here in the Centre for Energy Transition and coordinator of the environmental and biodiversity theme at the School of Engineering. She has over 13 years experience in sustainable materials and processes for carbon capture, utilization and storage, and she's an expert in experimental and numerical modeling of absorption-driven carbon capture processes and has extensive experience in unconventional microwave-assisted processes. And Claudia, it's all over to you. Maybe you're mute, Claudia?
Sorry for that. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely clear now.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Good morning. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to present a little bit an overview of technologies we do as part of the University of Aberdeen, special focus on the School of Engineering in this very important event of today. I'm gonna briefly cover what we do, obviously aiming at giving you a brief picture of the technologies we are investigating. And well, first of all, let me just see if I can. All right, sorry. So society's target is to achieve net zero by 2050. And as part of that, we have the government's commitment to combat climate change, which is to generate the 50% of the Scotland overall energy consumption from renewable energy sources by 2030, and also to decarbonize almost the complete energy system by 2050. Especially in the Northeast and Aberdeen area, the Energy Transition Scotland programme plans to develop new low carbon technologies such as marine renewable, hydrogen, and carbon capture, utilization, and storage. As part of our University of Aberdeen's commitment, we want to achieve net zero carbon emissions before 2040. And we want to excel in research that addresses this climate emergency, enables energy transition, and the preservation of biodiversity. And to do that, we will constantly invest in education and research to fulfill this purpose. So how the net zero emission target can be achieved? So I've listed the set of different technologies that are very recent reports published by the International Energy Agency on the roadmap to the zero net emission transition. Includes a special mention on renewables, hydrogen and hydrogen-based fuels, bioenergy, and carbon capture, utilization, and storage, which are some of the main research lines in our School of Engineering. So overall, what do? We take, or we get biomass and organic waste in general, different type of waste streams to produce renewable and sustainable chemicals, materials, and energy. So we do investigate the optimization of both biological and thermochemical processes to overcome existing limitation, but also we are investigating new processes to produce these chemicals, materials, and energy. And we have a Center for Neutral Transition working on that across schools. It's a multidisciplinary center in which we are investigating this a variety of different technologies to achieve this. Also, some of the research lines is focused on the CO2 conversion, so the transformation of CO2 into different chemicals, fuels, and materials through catalytic and sustainable catalysis and sustainable processes for this transformation of CO2 into added value materials, chemicals, and fuels. Also, we investigate hybrid plasma catalytic system to produce sustainable chemicals, for example, from biogas upgrading, to convert this biogas into different sustainable chemicals such as ethane, propane, hydrogen, propylene, etc. Also, as part of our research activities, we do research on unconventional carbon capture utilization technologies. So what we do is to valorize organic or lignocellulosic waste or different type of waste using CO2 to produce sustainable adsorbents that then will be used for gas separation technologies. So a couple of examples here are the separation of the biogas produced from the anaerobic digestion using organic wastes, and also the separation of CO2 from hydrogen produced from the dark fermentation using organic wastes as examples, but also we do investigate the production of blue hydrogen separating CO2 from the flue gas once natural gas is combusted. So we do the separation of the gases in this context is the separation of CO2 from the rest of the different gaseous mixtures by applying unconventional carbon capture technologies assisted with unconventional sources of heating, such as microwave, which has the potential of reduced energy penalty of this separation. And then the CO2 capture can be utilized in producing the sustainable adsorbent or in any of the applications I've mentioned in my previous slide. So all in all, we have energy produced out of these systems, such as biomethane and green hydrogen in this case, in this example of the slide, and an overall negative emission systems because we use residues that have captured CO2 previously, so such as the lignocellulosic waste. We have a low-cost process, and it promotes the circular economy because we are using a waste as a source for many of our processes. So this is just to show you some of the experimental facilities that we have at the School of Engineering for the unconventional carbon capture utilization technology. This is our purpose-modified microwave-assisted reactor to perform this investigation and these studies. Also, we do research on materials for energy harvesting, conversion, and storage that will be incorporated in new membranes for hydrogen and fuel cells. Again, these are some of the examples of experimental facilities we have, and this is some of our students working on a very nice and exciting project of a powered vehicle. A vehicle powered by hydrogen fuel cells. So hopefully I've covered, some of the research activities we do in our School of Engineering. And just before I finish, I would like to thank everyone for attending, and just to say that we are open and very willing to collaborate with any industrial or academic partners in any of these technologies, not only from the engineering perspective, but also into a more broader context, such as, I don't know, a multidisciplinary type of research in which we can combine the engineering expertise with any other expertise, such as social, business, and law, etc. So thank you very much, and please feel free to ask any question you might have.
Thank you, Claudia. It's really good to see technical stuff as well in the presentations. This is good. We're really proud of what we have in the school, and as Claudia said, absolutely open for collaboration. So we move on then with the last of our speakers. So last but not least, of course, it's a pleasure for me to introduce to you my colleague Vinay Mulgun-Math, who's going to show us some of the perspectives from the oil and gas sector and how it can help deliver the energy transition as well. Vinay is a chartered chemical engineer and serves as a chief technologist and head of research at OGTC, which is the Oil and Gas Technology Center. His focus is on nurturing the next generation of net zero technologies by leveraging research expertise from academia and maximizing it with industry. Vinay has previously served as a board member of the Scottish Energy Advisory Board, chaired by the First Minister, and he's a non-executive advisor to Energy Technology Partnership, Hydrogen Accelerator, and Scottish Carbon Capture and Storage. Vinay holds a PhD degree in carbon capture technologies from Canada and an MSc degree in process engineering from France. And it's, as I said before, a great pleasure to get you here and look forward to hearing your views. So the floor is yours, Vinay.
Yeah, thank you, Alf. Hello, everyone. The esteemed presenters before me have given you a fantastic overview of what energy transition means and what are the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. And what I'll do in my presentation is to give you a whistle-stop tour on what's the role played by OGTC in driving this energy transition. So for those who aren't aware of OGTC, we are a research and technology organization based in Aberdeen for the past 4 years. And our purpose has been to decarbonize the UK continental shelf. And now we've got a new focus, which is embedded in our mission here, which is about developing and deploying technology to accelerate an affordable energy transition. Key takeaways from this slide is about affordability. This was even alluded by Martin in the just transition. So affordable energy transition is a key takeaway I would see. But also a second takeaway would be innovation, which you find as a cross-cutting theme across our values at OGTC. So how do we achieve this collaboration? So basically, to get energy transition going forward, we approached the way of using collaboration as a mantra to engage key stakeholder types. And this includes both public, private, and also the not-for-profit organizations like SHIFCA, the Opportunity Northeast, SCCS, or even the Hydrogen Accelerator. So I would like to take a different perspective of trying to explain this through a technology lens. So from a technology readiness level, OGTC plays a role across the entire spectrum. So when you look at the low TRL technology spectrum, which is 1 to 4, OGTC has a flagship program called TechX program, which basically nurtures startups, and it's about trying to help the ideas mature in the early TRL stage. And so the second gap that would come when you try to nurture and mentor these startups would be to fund them so that they can scale up their technologies, wherein industry would commit a part to help driving the transition. So in partnership with the Scottish Enterprise, the Scottish Funding Council, and Scottish Government, we have now launched a new funding that targets low TRL technologies from 1 to 4. And currently there is a call for ideas open that is focused on the hydrogen end-to-end value chain, which is open until June the 14th. So if anyone hasn't seen it, please go and apply. And this is a fantastic opportunity. And how we are trying to target here is trying to get funding for the low TRL technology is quite difficult, and especially for academia. So this money would go to academia, but it has to be also led by an industry. So industry gains from this partnership, and we are trying to bring these two challenging entities to work together in the low TRL scale. And I think we have received strong feedback on this kind of funding, and there will be many call for ideas that will roll out in the years to come. But also, once you reach technology 4, OGTC would then introduce you to the 3 programs focusing on emissions reduction. You've got another program for energy systems integration and offshore energy 4.4 or 4.0. And this takes the technology that's scaled up from 4 all the way to 9, wherein we help the technologies mature, scale up, but also ensure field trials are completed with industry support and drive it across their commercialization. So the role in essence that OGTC plays here is to basically take an idea and drive it through commercialization. And to do this, we look at collaborating with all the key stakeholders. And I think that is what we would still need to go on, but we need to accelerate that collaboration going forward if we need to achieve our targets. So again, going a step further, what are we trying to do in this low TRL space? We are looking at trying to establish centers of excellence. As Martin alluded, this looking to set up a hydrogen campus. We have already got some good working relationships with our local academia in Aberdeen. So one example is the National Decommissioning Center, which we are partnered with the University of Aberdeen. And this looks at trying to reduce the cost of decommissioning, also looking at management of mature fields. And just putting facts out here, the 2020, the KPIs that has been achieved in the decommissioning space, there's been a 19% reduction in the cost when compared to 2017 numbers. And the 2017 baseline was roughly around 59 billion pounds. So we have achieved almost 19% reduction in 2020. And I would allude that this is in fact the good work done by the NDC as well. And, by developing these cutting edge tools and techniques like simulators that we have developed here. So this is all leading to a reduction in cost. And I think the work that we have done with Aberdeen is just the beginning, I would think. And through this partnership, we have also set up a doctoral training center at our NDC stuff here. So it's also trying to nurture the young minds and research into decommissioning technologies. And in a similar vein, we have partnered with the Robert Gordon University to set up our National Subsea Center. And the theme of this is focused on subsea engineering, data science, AI, and integrated energy, focused on the blue economy. So again, we are trying to set up a doctoral training center at the National Subsea Center, which is again looking at how we can nurture the R&D and the challenges that we can overcome. That again, Caitlin mentioned the R&D challenges that we need to overcome. So from an OJC viewpoint, we are trying to engage stakeholders, not only from academia, but also across the public and private stakeholders. So in summary, I would think it's exciting times for us. And OJDC has been at the forefront of nurturing partnership here. And all it needs at the moment is, we need to kind of accelerate with all stakeholder types to realize that energy transition is achieved across the UKCS, and affordability is the need of the day. So it's something that I want to stress again, is that we need to look at affordability and how we can work together and drive this together. So that is my end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Vinay. Always exciting to see all the angles and all the things that are ongoing. And I recall, like to highlight this opportunity that it's now open for GTC to participate for all the colleagues. Well, time flies when you're in good company, but we still have some questions here. There's some time to answer some questions. So obviously, thanks, Vinay, and thanks everyone for your talk so far. I think the first one may come from Josh Dersken, and it was addressed maybe to either perhaps Caitlin or Nigel. Josh was asking whether this strong focus on the hydrogen economy in Aberdeen was somehow preventing the spread of electrical vehicles in the area. And I don't know if either Caitlin or Nigel would like to comment on that.
I don't know that I would say that it's preventing the spread of electric vehicles in Aberdeen. I think the hydrogen vehicles in some ways are far more visible because they're tagged as hydrogen vehicles because of course we want to share the good information. I think certainly there's been investment in fleet vehicles that might otherwise be electric vehicles, but I think in terms of individuals purchasing vehicles, we're seeing reasonably similar uptake to what we would see in other areas across Scotland. I mean, there is some geographic difference in that uptake, and it partly depends on things like infrastructure availability, maintenance, people's range anxiety, et cetera. So there are a number of factors that tie into that, but I wouldn't say that it's kind of a tug of war between hydrogen and electric at this point, particularly for kind of personal private vehicles.
I would just echo Caitlin's comments. And so the deployment of the hydrogen vehicles in Aberdeen have been essentially in the fleets. So the hydrogen buses, the refuse truck, the street sweeper, and some cars that are in fleet applications. But the ideal application for a fuel cell vehicle is in an intensively used fleet where the fast refueling can be a real asset to actually the operational delivery of a service or reliability in service for the user. So again, I don't see these as being exclusive. I see them as being complementary. And it's worth remembering that actually every single hydrogen fuel cell vehicle has an electric drivetrain. So the two technologies are actually very, very closely linked in terms of delivery.
Thanks, Nigel. Thanks for the replies as well, Caitlin. So moving on to the next question, probably might be a question from our director, Tavis Potts, who would like to know the views of the panel on the priorities that should be taken into account to widespread social uptake of low carbon transport. I've seen that there's been already answered here, but I don't know if you want to make any other views on that.
I will always talk about transport, as you know, Alf. I mean, I think one of the biggest hurdles at the moment is just the price differential between conventional vehicles and low emission vehicles. So, you know, obviously in the context of this discussion, I'll focus on low emission vehicles rather than necessarily talking about active transport, et cetera. But the cost differential is quite high. So bringing that down is one thing. I think the second thing is really thinking about the availability of infrastructure, so that people aren't concerned that they're not going to be able to refuel their vehicles, or that if a car breaks down, that they're going to be able to fix it. And I think we sometimes forget all of the underlying infrastructure that really supports the ability to drive a conventional vehicle, you know, petrol stations and maintenance and operation systems, and to have low emissions vehicles, you need that same set of infrastructure across the board. So I think it's really trying to balance that out, and keeping in mind as well that it's not that there's going to be an immediate shift. You know, even if we stop selling new petrol and diesel vehicles, there will still be vehicles remaining on the roads that are older, that are secondhand, that are used. And of course, there's often going to be a disparity in the economics and the sociodemographics of people who can afford one or the other. So I think these are all things that we have to keep in mind as we look forward and make sure that we can make that transition, but again, thinking about it in terms of equity and confidence.
And you know, to build on that, I think the key opportunity is with, for example, public sector and logistics fleets, where often these are intensely used fleets. So if you can turn them from being petrol diesel into low carbon, the benefit is high. Often they have a return to base model in terms of refueling, which is also very helpful. So in particular, when it comes to either recharging or refueling vehicles, if you can actually run the vehicles from one location, you know, potentially up to hundreds of vehicles in the case of bus fleets, with one refueling location, that's actually a very good use of an asset in terms of starting to make it happen. So the other aspect here is that some of the work on the deployment of hydrogen logistics fleets, trucks, is actually being led by people such as Gordon McIntosh in AREG. So I think there's a real local opportunity for Aberdeen to be at the start of some really interesting deployments of hydrogen trucks, hydrogen fleets, and starting then to spread out across other areas of Scotland. And actually, you probably won't need many refuelers to make that successful. So looking forward to seeing that happen. And hopefully this is where the Centre for Energy Transition can actually help to build out some of the ideas and build the community that will help this to move forward.
I think probably I'll just build on what just Nigel said. Probably there's always a debate about whether it's electrons or the molecules. And I think for every application, there's a use case, and one has to look into that, I would believe. So if there is more curtailment of electricity, then there's a case for building hydrogen into the infrastructure, whether it's transportation or whether it's for power. And Nigel gave an example of the fuel cells that are being powered using natural gas or hydrogen fuel cells that can go in for stationary power applications. So one has to keep that in mind, and it's not always about efficiency, I would think. It's about ensuring just transition is taken into account, and that you have energy security all year round. I think that's what defines, and we should leave it to the markets to define whether it's electrons or the molecules. So I think there is a case for every technology here.
It's a very interesting point. I was actually in one of these long meetings with people from the government and other stakeholders debating whether the markets should regulate the transition or it was the government. And obviously, I guess this is a chicken and egg question, because you need to have a market, but obviously you need to invest to get this up and running.
So
Thanks,
Alf,
Vinay.
Can I just make a final comment? Just bring on Vinay's remark that this is about getting the market to work. Some people have made the observation that hydrogen could be like champagne. It's very expensive. You only use it for special occasions. I would actually say that, Heineken, the other description I've heard, is a bit like hydrogen's a bit like Heineken, refreshes the parts other fuels can't reach. And I think, this is actually the approach that we need to develop, is that the supply of the fuel is cost effective, low carbon. And if we can provide low carbon hydrogen at the right price, at the right time, then hopefully people won't be saying it's champagne. People will be saying, yes, let's use it, let's make it happen.
Thanks. It's an excellent example that I will use in my lectures, definitely not very close to lunchtime, because I guess that it's deadly, but except that's brilliant. So moving on to the next question here, question from Susan Smith, who was inquiring about how close to the South Harbor does the hydrogen campus need to be? And obviously that might be a question for Martin, who was talking about the energy transition zone.
Yeah, thanks, Alf. Yes, thanks for the question. Yes, there's, I guess, two angles to this. One is we're trying to maximize the opportunity that is the Dolphin project itself. So they're going to be bringing a hydrogen pipeline to shore, either very close to the energy transition zone, which is, for those that don't know, very close to the South Harbor that's currently being constructed, or slightly to the south of that location, a couple of kilometers to the south. We're working with academia and industry to see what else could we sort of, if you like, bolt on to that. So what other sort of test and demonstration facilities could we combine with the Dolphin project? These would be facilities for testing valves, for meters, for instrumentation. And then broadening that in the concept of the campus is into, if you like, indoor facilities. So there is a national laboratory for metrology that tests and verifies our petrol pumps, for instance. And if hydrogen emerges, then the similar sort of technology will be required. Meters will need to be validated. Fiscal meters for CO2 will need to be validated. And as well as hydrogen. And as mentioned, the energy transition zone is very much trying to attract energy transition businesses and manufacturing opportunities and supply chain to the region. So we're trying to encourage and nest hydrogen related activities, working with partners such as Vinny on the sort of business incubation technology acceleration component. Energy transition zone is very much conditional on planning, so it's part of the local development plan, so it's going to the city council, and obviously will be part of community engagement as well. So maybe very close or very or just to the south of the proposed energy transition zone.
Thanks, Martin. Yep, a lot of going on there. I would like to address the next question, who is from Alistair, to Claudia, to see what her views is as a technologist. Alistair was mentioning, in best case and irrespective of climate change, how long will it take to make the energy transition? I don't know, Claudia, you have any views on this, and optimistic or pessimistic as a technologist fighting with the technology every day in the lab? You're in mute.
Sorry again. So this is a very, very nice question, very good thought question, but very difficult to answer, to be honest. I wish I would have the answer straightforward. So we are moving towards this transition at the moment. We are investing all our effort and willingness on changing, the current landscape regarding the energy production and how we get the energy and where we get the energy from. It's very difficult to give, obviously, a timeline, but obviously we are committed to those targets I presented in my presentation, right? So we want to decarbonize almost fully the energy system by 2050, and by starting with the transport sector earlier on, and I mean step by step, but I personally don't think it will be achieved earlier unless we accelerate our research and our efforts at the moment. Obviously, we are doing that, trying to get the process up and running, and we have started doing it as well. But it's very difficult to give, obviously, a date. And this is obviously something that depends on many political decisions as well, not only technology sometimes. So this is my personal view on that.
If I could just add one thing, Alf, just you know, what gets measured gets managed, and we've got the Committee on Climate Change effectively, you know, reporting back on all the government's performance in this space. We've got a lot of stakeholder groups out with government really interested in this area. So I think it's hugely challenging to get to net zero, but at least we've set that target, and we've set the interim targets, as Nigel has said, 75% by 2030 in Scotland. But reality is it's going to require every single day for us to be doing something in this space. And there's still, unfortunately, quite a lot of days where we're not really moving the dial adequately. But I do think there's going to be so much focus on this that if we miss it, it'll only be by hopefully a short period of time. But huge role for business, huge role for the supply chain, huge role for universities. Everyone has to get behind this agenda.
So maybe just I want to add to that. We need to know that net zero is just a transition path along the journey to zero carbon. So it's just a starting point or a middle point, let's say. So I think our focus should still be on zero carbon as we proceed. But again, what would happen to the embedded carbon? That's for a different conversation. But even getting to scope 1 and scope 2, if we can try to ensure that we get to zero carbon, I think that should be our objective in this path.
That's a very good point. When we get net zero, then we'll have to change the names of so many things, including the Center for Energy Transition. Good. So I'm conscious of time. Perhaps we can go through a couple of more questions, because I know that it's lunchtime. Almost. We've got a question from Osaruge, who goes to all panelists. The NRA estimates that about 8 billion GBP would be needed to set up the refueling stations required by hydrogen fuel cars. Are there any plans to on ground to generate funding to meet the demand by 2030? And at the moment, in the presentation, there have been only one refueling station highlighted in Aberdeen. I don't know if it's a question probably for Nigel.
Yes, thanks, Alf. So this is quite a difficult question, because I haven't seen that estimate of 8 billion for the refueling infrastructure. There are about 8,000 refueling stations in the UK at the moment. If we're trying to develop the refueling infrastructure for hydrogen, I don't think we'll need to do it in every single refueling station. In fact, the strategic locations, you could probably cover the whole of the UK with a couple of hundred refueling stations, on the basis that you pick out the key nodes where people travel by and the areas where people tend to be based. Obviously, that wouldn't give you the same coverage in the initial stages, but it would cost a lot less money. So, the deployment of refueling stations, and there are many companies out there saying we'll build hundreds of refueling stations. Actually, to build hundreds of refueling stations, you need to have the vehicles on the road to make it viable. And this is the classic chicken and egg situation. Germany has already built a lot of hydrogen refueling stations, but many of them are not heavily used. So we need to be absolutely sure that the infrastructure that goes in place is going to be viable. And this is where the actual staged process, often working with fleets and public sector in the first instance, I think will be the key that unlocks the rapid deployment of hydrogen refueling across the UK to a level that then allows commercial operators to come in and build on that initial network.
If I could just add one very quick point, Nigel, I think the other thing that will happen is we'll start to join up the dots. So actually there are 2 hydrogen refueling stations in Aberdeen, and the work we did in the whole region, so that's going all the way up to the north, the Highland, all the way down to Angus. We were thinking, estimating about 9 refueling stations in total, so an additional 7 would be required. And I think this is what's going to happen. There's going to be key routes that will start to join up between cities. Nigel's already flagged the importance of decarbonizing hauliers as a for instance. So there'll be key routes that I think where we'll start to create that backbone of refueling stations. And then choice has come up in this conversation a few times, and so it should. The choice of the consumer will then start to emerge, whether it's battery charging points or additional refueling stations that will be required going forward. So many of these, this area is, there's a lot of reports, a lot of big numbers put out there, but I think we've got to just start growing from what we've got and seeing where consumer choice is going to take us in, say, 10 years' time.
Thanks, Martin. I think you're right. People like to choose to make their own choices as well. Right, so we've got another question from Josh Tersken, probably directed to Vinay. Just wants to know whether OGTC is going to fund as well low TRL levels investments, because they are blue skies and not directly applicable to industry. And this links to obviously the call that is at the moment open, which requires the presence of industry.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, absolutely, you're right. We do fund disruptive technologies as well. And as an example, I would say we have invested in 2 companies on seawater electrolysis, which doesn't include desalination. So that's one example, but also on direct air capture. We have invested in a couple of companies who are looking at disruptive ways of trying to achieve the solution. So in terms of low TRL technologies, I've said we've got funding available at the moment. It's live. It's focused on hydrogen end-to-end, all the way up to TRL4. I think we can help support build that network. If you have an idea and if you don't have a partner, let's say, or a university, we can even go and help with that matchmaking process. So I would strongly suggest, if you've got a good idea that's blue sky thinking, please approach us and we'll do our best to help you out.
Thank you, Vinay. I'm pretty sure that we will. Absolutely. The last question, thanks for this reply, might be probably a general one. It's a question about, well, blue or green technologies, so blue or green hydrogen, but it's also a general one. So I don't know if you have any views on that. What do you think we should invest? Where do you think we are heading to during the next few years?
Well, if I could have a quick go, as a region that's really got oil and gas as part of our energy mix at the moment, and as a region that has a responsibility to support that industry as we support every other industry to get to net zero, we firmly believe that blue hydrogen and green hydrogen have got key roles to play going forward. Probably in terms of hydrogen production, relatively small green hydrogen probably will happen first, but scale will required for some of the changes, the 5 gigawatt targets, for instance, from both the UK and Scottish governments by 2030. Realistically, they will be blue hydrogen projects. Obviously, blue hydrogen is contingent on CCS, it's contingent on CO2 transport and storage sites being operational. But the region has got a huge opportunity in both blue and green. There's probably a commercial bias for green going forward, but I think we need both as part of the energy transition, and very much firmly in this space of energy transition, the simple definition being going from high carbon energy to low carbon, no carbon energy. Blue hydrogen is a great opportunity to go from high carbon to low carbon as a stepping stone to no carbon with green hydrogen going forward.
So to build on the, Aberdeen is absolutely in a almost unique position with easy access to proven or very suitable locations for CO2 storage. But other locations around Scotland, you've got the potential to scale up with green hydrogen. I think for me, one of the key things is, if we're talking about low carbon hydrogen, we need to be absolutely transparent on the carbon footprint that is associated with the hydrogen, whether it's green or blue. And that means going right back into the supply chain of the fuel, in the case of blue hydrogen, to make sure that we aren't just taking imported liquid natural gas with a very high carbon footprint, turning that into blue hydrogen, but then being responsible for a large footprint of emissions. You know, the beauty is if you're directly connected to the gas fields in the North Sea by a pipe, that's actually a low carbon footprint source of methane. And that's something that could be built on, I think, by Aberdeen. So, you know, absolutely, we need both green and blue, but I think we also need to be very, very clear about what is generally low carbon, because, you know, a lot of people have said, you know, the customer is colorblind. They don't really care whether it's green or blue. Well, in my experience, that is absolutely not the case. They know the difference and they know what they want. And let's make sure if they're getting low carbon hydrogen, it does what it says on the tin.
But just to go forward on that, probably, you know, it's not about blue or green. Probably it's the rainbow colors of hydrogen. So many out there, and I would think only two factors matter. I would think one would be the price point, you know, from a commercial perspective, what's cheapest, what can run right now, and second, it's the policy. So what precludes, let's say, a local council from buying only green hydrogen if it comes at a premium? So I think the policy work needs to be done at the moment, because at this point of time, it's only the cost that drives the supply of hydrogen anywhere in the UK. So I think we need to do more work on that.
Thanks. Yep. Go ahead, please.
If I might add a comment here, a follow-on comment. I mean, I agree with all of your points. Just wanted to comment on the need, obviously, of both color of hydrogen, because if we want to achieve a smooth transition, we obviously need blue hydrogen, because this is what we are doing at the moment, right? So we are using fossil fuels, and we cannot pretend to achieve the net zero target just by jumping from what we do now to what you know, we can do in terms of other sources of energy and produce green hydrogen, which is something obviously could be perhaps done in parallel, and with effort and research put in place, we will do. But obviously we cannot obviate or just pretend that the oil and gas sector is not in the region. And we have an advantage, a great advantage of having this in place, because we have the installations, and perhaps obviously this carbon footprint can be diminished by the benefit of having this already in place, and how best we can squeeze our sources and our capacity to become or to convert these current activities a bit greener. But obviously, I fully agree that it has to be, so every technological or technical project must be accompanied by a multidisciplinary approach, and the life cycle assessment, sustainability, everything has to be measured and studied to truly make sure that we are producing green energy, and producing, not generating by these new technologies or by this energy that we might need to produce this new hydrogen. Will be, you know, eventually not green, because we are investing energy and resources on that. So we need to make sure what we are doing is indeed in line with our target. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Claudia. Thanks, everyone, for your comments. Question is how green is green? Right. So I think I'm really conscious of time, and so we're probably going to have to give this to a closure. There are a couple of questions that remain unanswered. One about legal and regulatory challenges, but we will forward this question to our colleague, probably John Patterson, who may be giving you an excellent reply on that. So it will be really good. And another one about geothermal. So we'll find as well the expert within the center, and then we'll get you an answer on that as well, so that we can do it now. So it's my time for me just to wrap up very closely. I mean, very, very shortly. Sorry, I would just like to say it's been, I think, a very fruitful discussion. There's a lot going on in Aberdeen, in the region, and I think one of the One of the targets of the Center for Energy Transition is just trying to capitalize, as I said before, put people together, and this has been an excellent panel to do that, because people from different backgrounds, but also going beyond Aberdeen and the region. We are talking about exporting hydrogen, we're talking about exporting technology, we're talking about exporting our experience, using our infrastructure and the one to come. And I think, well, I hope that these discussions will help everyone to encourage to invest in time and devote their professional careers and lives as well into this. It's a great pleasure again to be part of this huge wave through the energy transition. So I'll just would like to thank everyone. I'll start by thanking Lynn, Martin, Bruce, Rona, and all the team who's been working in the shadows here to make this call possible. Obviously, I'd like to thank the excellent speakers we had today, starting with Nigel, Caitlin, Martin, Claudia, and Pinay. Thanks a lot for spending time with us, and I appreciate that we'll meet very soon again. And finally, last but not least, to all the attendees, thanks for coming today. Thanks for your questions, for your participation, and for your interest in the topic. I think that you will have available the slides of the presenters if you want to, and I'm pretty sure our marketing team and the communication team will be in touch if you want to have any further questions. And of course, feel free just to get into the Center for Energy Transition webpage, contact our experts, and we'll, as Claudia said, we're a really open community and very happy to get as many people as possible on board. And that's all from me. Thanks. It's been a great pleasure. Take care and hopefully see you very soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.